And when you did leave the Pirates the first time around, Greg, did you feel like you were betting on yourself when you left the Pirates, to go take that position you mentioned earlier in Youngstown and then eventually off to Buffalo?
I don't know. I called it. I thought I was betting on myself, but I was in love with the business. In fact, I did that summer of weekend sports anchoring on WFMJ-TV, and I was getting pretty good at it to the point where the sports director, sometime in I don't know what this would have been, uh, probably January of 1988. Would that be 88 or 89? 89, January of 89. January of 1989, the news director called me in Youngstown, called me into his office, and he said, "We want to make you our full-time weeknight sports anchor and sports director." I have to admit, I'll tell you when I'm not good, but I was pretty good. I was a pretty good, I mean, it was a good start. And I think I could have, I wasn't thinking about going big, but that was a big offer to be a full-time weekend sports anchor. I mean, full-time weeknight, 6 and 11 sports anchor. And the news anchor on weekends, Lori Schultz, I believe, was also being offered something. She and I were the team for that one year. Uh, and so it was pretty good. But right at that time, I was offered this job up in Buffalo to be the number two radio play-by-play guy, color/color analyst, and to work the radio station while also helping the baseball team, the minor league baseball team in Buffalo, put together a radio network. I'd worked with Pittsburgh, the Pirates, the radio network affiliate, as radio TV coordinator on a 50 station radio network. I was the liaison between the flagship KDK and all of our affiliates. And so they felt in Buffalo, having talked to people at the Pirates, knowing the Pirates knew me, the Pirates said, I think Greg could help you. He could do some play by play. He wants to be an on air guy anyway, but he could also put a little network together for you, which we did. We put like a 5 station network together. And I went up there and I didn't know where Buffalo was on the map. I swear to God, I didn't know where it was. I could have been near New York City. And in fact, when I went to do my first interview, I said, "Do I have to fly there? I guess I got to get a flight." And I looked on the map. Oh my gosh, I could drive there. It's only 4 hours. So I went up there and did the interview. And the one thing I did do, I went out there without thinking. I didn't think about this. I do now, but most people go from the minors to the majors. I did the exact opposite. I had a job in the big leagues and going to the minor leagues. And I felt like over the years that I was good enough, having done those broadcaster for a night, though I didn't get the job, but that one inning of play by play. I did public address announcing for a couple of years at Three River Stadium. I did I did a weekend show called This Week in Pirates Baseball that was very well produced. I voiced over highlight films. I produced, I directed highlight films. I was the director of our scoreboard crew. I edited. Um, I did not only voiceover work, I did promos. I mean, I did it all, just about everything except actual play-by-play for the Pirates on a full-time basis. But I worked stats with Lanny. I really felt like, I mean, geez, oh man, Greg Brown's the obvious choice here if you're going to make a change. My boss, the director of broadcasting at the time, who had recommended me to the people in Buffalo, said to me, "Hey, don't tell anybody this, but next year after the season, we're going to make a change, the play-by-play job." So I knew they were going to move from this one gentleman, and he basically said, "You go up there and you do a job. You have a chance. You could apply for this gig." So I go up there. I guess my thought was, I'll go up there, just put a year in. I'm ready. I'm ready now. But if that's what I got to do, okay. Well, I went up there and I did a year, and I applied, and I didn't get the job. In fact, I also applied when Ernie Harwell got fired by Bo Schembechler. A little crazy, but Bo Schembechler, the iconic coach for Michigan Wolverines football, became the president of the Detroit Tigers for a short time, believe it or not. And he made the foolish move of firing legendary Hall of Fame announcer Ernie Harwell. He thought they needed a new voice. He got crucified for it. But for a year, Ernie was out of the booth, and I applied for that job, that vacated job. Thank God I didn't get that gig because that's a no-win situation. Um, so anyhow, I ended up going up there to Buffalo, and after getting the return down for a year, did 4 more years, and then got the job. But I did go there, Colton, to kind of your question. I went out there without a safety net. There was never a guarantee that I was going to come back to Pittsburgh, as evidenced by the fact that I didn't get the job the first time. No guarantees whatsoever. So that part of it was, I know, scary, but maybe you could say I did bet on myself there.
And what were your favorite memories during your time in Buffalo, Greg? Of course, right out of the gate, just you would talk about being at the right place at the right time with the Super Bowl runs for the Bills with Jim Kelly, and also having the chance to call basketball as well for the University of Buffalo.
Well, I spoke in funny with earlier today. I did a Zoom class with some kids up at UB, University of Buffalo, and they had me and Paul Peck, who does University of Buffalo play-by-play, and Pete Weber is the original voice of the Nashville Predators hockey team. He does the radio for them. But Pete was the number one play-by-play guy, and he was the sports director of the radio station. So I worked for the station, I worked for Pete, but I was so fortunate, I said it again to the students today, that I was so fortunate to work with and for Pete because he just he just so unselfishly, he just threw me into the deep end of the pool and he let me do everything. I mean, yeah, I did the middle innings of play by play while doing color the other innings on the radio with Pete. But we also had the rights to the UB basketball, eventually got the rights to the Sabres, eventually got the rights to the Bills. But I mean, we were putting, I did sports talk. I did morning drive, afternoon drive. I did UB basketball. I did a little UB hockey. I did eventually pre and post between periods work with the Sabres. Before we got the rights to the Bills, we put this, back then it was unheard of, Colton. We didn't have the rights to the Bills, but yet in Pete's genius was to put together a 3-hour pregame leading up to kickoff, countdown to kickoff. Didn't have the rights to the team, but we did a 3-hour show. We did it live from Rich Stadium at our mobile unit. So we weren't allowed in the stadium, but we did it from outside our mobile unit. And we put together, I mean, it was just ingenious. We had a bunch of people at the station working on it. We did interviews, of course. We did phone calls. We did tape stuff during the week. We also owned the rights to the Marv Levy show, the head coach, and the Bill Polian show, the general manager. So we would take snippets. And that's the other thing Pete had me do, which led me to doing the Bills games, because I was hosting the general manager show and the head coach from Rich Stadium. And eventually, when we got the rights to the Bills, they were looking for a new color analyst, and they, thanks to Bill Polian and Marv Levy, they had gone to our radio station owners and said, the guy you need to hire to be your color analyst is Greg Brown. And it blew me out of the water. So, yeah, I was at the right time, the right place, and incredibly fortunate.
Yeah, how did it feel for you out of the gate to have that chance with the Bills to broadcast all of those Super Bowls? And also, how was that like for you having the transition to a broadcaster as a fan, knowing that you work for the Bills now, but you grew up a Bears fan?
Yeah, that part wasn't tough. That's, in fact, that part's rather easy. Whenever you go to broadcast a team, your team broadcast or any other allegiance for me is gone, because now you get to know these people, on a personal level, and You become sometimes friends with them, certainly people within the organization, if not the player. I mean, to this day, Marv Levy turned 100 years old last week. He's a Hall of Fame coach, and I emailed him last week, this summer, and emailed him and still in contact with him. I consider him a friend. So anyway, so yeah, you root for almost immediately because you pour everything into it. You're there every day. I was there every day as the beat reporter, and starting in training camp in Fredonia, New York, when the Bills reported. I was there every single day, watching the practices, reporting from there. I got the nickname Touchdown Greg Brown. I was on the air constantly on the other shows. Morning Drive. They'd have every Monday morning. They'd have me on for 3 hours taking calls because I lived Bills football. I broke a lot of the big stories. I knew the coaches, and so yeah, you live it, and so that part wasn't difficult. Was difficult was going from being a baseball guy to a football guy. When the program director Chuck Finney called me into his office one day, again, I did not was totally unaware, no clue. I knew that we were going to have to hire a new color analyst for the Bills, but I had no idea that I was even on the radar. But I sit down and they close the door. He goes, "Hey, we've got a heck of an opportunity for you. We want to announce you as our new Buffalo Bills color analyst. Starting, game one, it was the World Bowl in Europe in London, England was the first, I think, the Eagles and the Bills preseason." And he says, "What do you think?" I said, "What do I think?" I said, "It's a slap in the face." He goes, "What?" I said, "I came here to do baseball, and you're asking me to be a football analyst?" I said, "I'm going to have time to think about this." He goes, "Well, geez, okay. Give it till tomorrow and think about it." And I leave and I'm furious. I'm fuming. One of my first phone calls was to Mike Lang and my father. I didn't know what to do because I thought now all of a sudden I'm being taken out of the baseball gig and going into football. I want to be a Major League Baseball announcer. Well, Mike Lang said, "You're out of your mind. You've got to do it. You don't turn down a job like that." So I went back to them the next day and I said, "Okay, I'll take it." And I think what's funny about it is I ended up Colton. I think they ended up paying me a little more money, thinking that maybe that was what I was trying to do. And I had no intention. I didn't care about the money, but I got more money out of it. But what it did do, and thank God I took it because going back to the story about the Pirates, everybody in the front office knew me. Lanny Fratteri, I'm sure, recommended me. But I think, after that first year, I told you that I applied and I didn't get the job. I think I was good enough then, but I don't think the Pirates were convinced. 4 years later, now having gone to four straight Super Bowls, I think they said, "Boy, this is an NFL announcer. I think he's a big league announcer." So I really do think that was the pivotal point that turned the tide. I don't know. Maybe I'd have gotten the job anyway without the Bills, but I just think that they looked at me kind of in a whole new light.
And how did that opportunity come for you, Greg? The head back to Pittsburgh, the join Lanny as one of the play-by-play announcers in 1994.
Yeah, they brought a new guy in, and whatever year that would have been now, 1990. They brought a new guy in who did 4 years there, and I guess they weren't happy. And I applied again. And I know that it was not just Lanny, but there were some like women secretaries in the front office that I had, gotten to know from a kid. I was literally a kid. They watched me grow. They helped me grow. Those people in the front office. And that was the toughest part about leaving Pittsburgh. That was cutting the umbilical cord. That was my home growing up. Pittsburgh was my Oz. I tell people when I came from little town of Mechanicsburg to Pittsburgh, the big city, and the way the city lit up, I loved everything about it. And even when I was in Buffalo, I would make occasional drives down to Pittsburgh to visit friends. It tugged at my heart. And so I'm back and, prayed that this would finally be it, my opportunity, because who knows when this would come up again. Lucky enough that it came up 4 years later. I will never forget, Colton. I was in Rich Stadium where the Bills played. And like I said, I reported there every day. And this was leading up to one of the playoff games. might have been the Super Bowl. There was a 2 week window, I believe, after our last playoff game there, but it was, sometime in January of 1994, and I was in the area where they it was a workroom, they called it, where the press, and I would hang out there every day, and I'd be listening to tape, I'd be listening to my interviews, I'd be preparing to go interview Marv Levy or someone else. I lived there at Rich Stadium, and for whatever reason, I happened to be there at this particular time. No other members of the media were there. I got there earlier, whatnot. Scott Birchtold was the director of publicity for the Buffalo Bills, and he came in with no cell phones yet, no cell phones, but he came in with the long cord of the landline, and he brought this phone and he put it on this countertop, and he said, "Hey, you're getting a phone call here in a few minutes." So, okay, that was weird. So answer it. Phone rings. Hello, Greg? Yeah, well, actually, another story, but the people, some of the people in Buffalo called me Stains, Stains, because I'm always flailing my arms around. And without fail, almost every single, even to this day, I'll smack over a cup of coffee or water and spill it everywhere. I went on a blind date once, and word got around that somebody set me up with this blind date, and she was very nice. She was all dressed up and wore this high countertop, and I ordered a drink. I don't think it was wine, but whatever it was. I mean, we're not a minute into our fight. I'd never met her in the first minute of conversation. Sure as shooting, hit this glass. It spills all over her, and so yeah, my nickname was Stain. So on the other end was the owner of the radio station, Mindy Rich. Bob and Mindy Rich were not only owners of the radio station, but the Rich Products is a multi-billion-dollar industry based in Buffalo, New York. They're in the food industry. And that fact, Rich Stadium, they had owned the rights to what they called Rich Stadium for many years up in Buffalo. I don't know what it's called now. Maybe is it Highmark?
Yeah, it's called Highmark Stadium now.
Okay. So back then it was Rich Stadium. And anyway, so Mindy Rich she was the boss at the radio station. And hello, Stains? Yeah, it's Mindy. I know it was Sue. She said Stains. She goes, well, I just got off the phone with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and my heart like leaps. And she said, I selfishly didn't want to do this, but I know where your heart is and where your dreams are, and I've given them permission to talk to you, because they had to call and ask for permission, and they called Mindy. And I will never forget that phone call, of course, as long as I live. I'll never forget the elation. But it was weird, too, because I still had a job to do preparing for the Super Bowl. But to think there's a song that Jennifer, what's her name, the country music singer, does with, dang it, my memory. Anyhow, about you can't go home. Who says you can't go home? And every time I hear that song, I think about me. And because it's basically saying, who says you can't go home? As a matter of fact, you can go home. Anyway, so that's that I knew I was going back home, and it was a great, great feeling.
Yeah, then fast forward now to 2025, Greg, with everything that you have been through, with the Pirates, and
Let me interrupt you. Bon Jovi and Jennifer Nettles. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh no, no
would have killed me.
No worries, Greg.